Good morning, students. We all know that India is a multilingual country where different languages are spoken. It becomes increasingly difficult to communicate when you don't know the language of the other person. Today, we're looking at a humorous narrative written by R.K. Narayan. R.K. Narayan was a pioneer of Indian literature. He was an Indian writer, best remembered for his stories set in the fictional South Indian town of Malgudi. His stories are simple, easy, and have humor. They explain the everyday lives of ordinary people. R.K. Narayan's first novel was Swami and Friends. He is famous for his collection of stories, Malgudi Days. Let's have a look at the awards that R.K. Narayan won. He won the Padma Vibhushan, the Padma Bhushan, the Sahitya Academy Fellowship, and Benson Medal by British Royal Society of Literature. R.K. Narayan died at the age of 94. He left behind a body of work that will continue to impress generations of readers. Today, we are reading A Horse and Two Goats. Of the 700,000 villages dotting the map of India, Kritam was probably the tiniest, indicated on the district survey map by a microscopic dot. But its size did not prevent its giving itself the grandiose name Kritam, which meant in Tamil coronet or crown, on the brow of this subcontinent. The village consisted of less than 30 houses, only one of them built with brick and cement, painted a brilliant yellow and blue all over, with gorgeous carvings of gods and gargoyles on its balustrade. It was known as the Big House. The other houses, distributed in 4 streets, were generally of bamboo thatch, straw, mud, and other unspecified material. The story is set in a tiny village of South India called Kritam, which means crown in Tamil. There were less than 30 houses made up of bamboo thatch, straw, mud, etc. Only one house was built with brick and cement. It was painted yellow and blue with carvings of gods and gargoyles on its balustrade. It was known as the Big House. Munni's was the last house in the 4th Street beyond which stretched the fields. In his prosperous days, Munni had owned a flock of 40 sheep and goats and sallied forth every morning, driving the flock to the highway a couple of miles away. There, he would sit on the pedestal of a clay statue of a horse while his cattle grazed around. He carried a crook at the end of a bamboo pole and snapped foliage from the avenue trees to feed his flock. He also gathered faggots and dry sticks, bundled them, and carried them home for fuel at sunset. Here we meet the protagonist of the story, Muni, who lived in the 4th Street beyond which stretched the fields. He used to have a big flock of sheep and goats whom he used to take to graze every morning. While they grazed, he sat on the pedestal of a clay statue of a horse. At sunset, he returned with dry sticks to be used as fuel and plucked green leaves with his crook for his animals. Let's have a look at some of the meanings now. Dotting, spread out. Grandiose, impressive. Microscopic, very small. Gorgeous, very attractive. Gargoyles, a comically carved human or animal face or figure. Balustrade, a railing. Faggots, a bundle of sticks bound together as fuel. Crook, a bent or curved implement. His wife lit the domestic fire at dawn, boiled water in a mud pot, threw into it a handful of millet flour, added salt, and gave him his first nourishment for the day. When he started out, she would put in his hand a packed lunch, once again the same millet cooked into a little ball, which he could swallow with a raw onion at midday. His fortunes had declined gradually unnoticed. From a flock of 40 which he drove into the pen at night, his stock had now come down to the 2 goats which were tethered to the trunk of a drumstick tree which grew in front of his hut, and from which occasionally Munni could shake down drumsticks. This morning he got 6. He carried them in with a sense of triumph. Although no one could say precisely who owned the tree, it was his because he lived in its shadow. His wife said, "If you were content with the drumstick leaves alone, I could boil and salt some for you." "Oh, I'm tired of eating those leaves. I have a craving to chew the drumstick out of sauce, I tell you." "You have only 4 teeth in your jaw, but your craving is for big things." "All right, get the stuff for the sauce, and I will prepare it for you. After all, next year you may not be alive to ask for anything. But first, get me all the stuff, including a measure of rice or millet, and I will satisfy your unholy craving. Our store is empty today. Dal, chili, curry leaves, mustard, coriander, gingerly oil, and 1 large potato. Go out and get all this." He repeated the list after her in order not to miss any item and walked off to the shop in the 3rd street. Let us meet a strong and hard-working character, Muni's wife. She woke early and cooked a meal for him. They had lost their cattle and were left only with 2 goats. They had no money for a good meal. Their meal consisted of millet flour, salt, and water, and the same was packed as lunch with a raw onion. A drumstick tree grew in front of Muni's house, and so he claimed it to be his. This morning, Muni got 6 drumsticks and asked his wife to prepare a sauce out of it. His wife was quite blunt and told him that he had only 4 teeth in his jaw and there were no ingredients in the house. But she commented that he might not be alive next year, so she would prepare it. She gave him a list to buy from the shop. Muni sat patiently on an upturned packing case below the platform of the shop. The shopman paid no attention to him. Muni kept clearing his throat, coughing, sneezing, until the shopman could not stand it anymore and demanded, "What ails you? You will fly off that seat into the gutter if you sneeze so hard, young man." Muni laughed inordinately in order to please the shopman at being called young man. This completely won the shopman over. He liked his sense of humor to be appreciated. By thus humoring the shopman, Muni could always ask for 1 or 2 items of food, promising repayment later. Some days the shopman was in a good mood and gave in, and sometimes he would lose his temper suddenly and bark at Muni for daring to ask for credit. The shopman said, "If you could find 5 rupees and a quarter, you will have paid off an ancient debt. How much have you got now?" "I will pay you everything on the 1st of the next month." "As always. And whom do you expect to rob by then?" Muni felt caught and mumbled, "My daughter has sent word that she will be sending me money." "Have you a daughter?" sneered the shopman. "And she is sending you money? For what purpose, may I know?" "Birthday. 50th birthday," said Muni quietly. "Birthday? How old are you?" Muni repeated weakly, not being sure of himself. 50. He always calculated his age from the time of the Great Famine, when he stood as high as a parapet around the village well. But who could calculate such things accurately nowadays, with so many famines occurring? The shopman felt encouraged when other customers stood around to watch and comment. "More likely you are 70, he said to Muni. "You also forget that you mentioned a birthday 5 weeks ago when you wanted castor oil for your holy bath." At this, Muni unobtrusively rose and moved off. He later told his wife, "That scoundrel would not give me anything, so go out and sell the drumsticks for what they are worth." He flung himself down in a corner to recoup from the fatigue of his visit to the shop. His wife said, "You are getting no sauce today, nor anything else. I can't find anything to give you to eat. Fast till the evening. It'll do you good. Take the goats and be gone now." She cried and added, "Don't come back before the sun is down." He knew that if he obeyed her, she would somehow conjure up some food for him in the evening. Only he must be careful not to argue and irritate her. Her temper was undependable in the morning, but improved by evening time. She was sure to go out and work, grind corn in the big house, sweep or scrub somewhere, and earn enough to buy foodstuff and keep a dinner ready for him in the evening. Unleashing the goats from the drumstick tree, Muni started out, driving them ahead and uttering weird cries from time to time in order to urge them on. He passed through the village with his head bowed in thought. He did not want to look at anyone or be accosted. A couple of cronies lounging in the temple corridor hailed him, but he ignored their call. The shopman had said that he was 70. At 70, one only waited to be summoned by God. When he was dead, what would his wife do? They had lived in each other's company since they were children. He had been told on their day of wedding that he was 10 years old and she was 8. Progeny? None. Perhaps a large progeny would have brought him the blessings of the gods. Now we meet the shopkeeper. When Muni approached the shopkeeper ignored him, for he knew that Muni would ask for credit. Muni tried to gain his attention by clearing his throat and sneezing. The shopkeeper warned Muni that he would fall into the gutter and called him a young man. Muni laughed at this, but he deliberately laughed to please the shopkeeper who liked to be appreciated for his humor. This helped Muni to buy on credit if the mood was good. But the shopkeeper reminded Muni of his previous debt. Muni tried to convince him that he would pay next month as his daughter would send money. The shopkeeper was surprised to hear that Muni had a daughter and why would she send money? To which Muni replied it was his 50th birthday. The shopkeeper was taken aback and told Muni he was much older. He might be 70 years old. He also told Muni that he had taken castor oil a few weeks ago for his birthday. Thus, Muni returned home empty-handed. His wife shouted at him and told him he would not be getting anything till evening. She warned him not to return before sunset. Muni knew that his wife's temper would settle down by then. She would manage to cook something by working in the big house and earn money to buy some foodstuff. Muni took his goats and set off. On the way, some old friends who were sitting in the temple corridor called out to him, but Muni ignored them. He kept thinking about the shopkeeper's remark about his age. The thought frightened him, as it dawned on him he was old and time to die. He was worried about his wife, who would be left alone, as they had no children. Let's have a look at some of the meanings. Cravings, strong desire. Unobtrusively, unnoticingly. Recoup is recover. Conjure up, to create or achieve something difficult. Accosted, detained. Cronies, friends. Summoned, called. Progeny, offspring or children. Tethered, fastened or tied. Only on the outskirts did he lift his head and look up. He urged and bullied the goats until they meandered along to the foot of the horse statue on the edge of the village. He sat on its pedestal for the rest of the day. The advantage of this was that he could watch the highway and see the lorries and buses pass through the hills, and it gave him a sense of belonging to a larger world. The pedestal of the statue was broad enough for him to move around as the sun traveled up westward. Or he could also crouch under the belly of the horse for shade. The horse was nearly life-size, molded out of clay, baked, burnt, and brightly colored, and reared its head proudly, prancing its forelegs in the air and flourishing its tail in a loop. Beside the horse stood a warrior with sight-like mustachios, bulging eyes, and aquiline nose. The horse itself was said to have been as white as a dhobi wash sheet and had on its back a cover of pure brocade of red and black lace, matching the multicolored sash around the waist of the warrior. But none in the village remembered the splendor, as no one noticed its existence. Even Munni, who spent all his waking hours at its foot, never bothered to look up. It was untouched even by the young vandals of the village, who gashed tree trunks with knives and tried to topple off milestones and inscribed lewd designs on all walls. This statue had been closer to the population of the village at one time when the spot bordered the village. Muni sat at the foot of the statue, watching his two goats graze in the arid soil among the cactus and lantana bushes. He looked at the sun. It had tilted westward, no doubt, but it was not the time yet to go back home. If he went too early, his wife would have no food for him. Also, he must give her time to cool off her temper and feel sympathetic, and then she would scrounge and manage to get some food. Soon Muni reached the spot where he regularly went. He let his goats move while he sat at the foot of the horse statue. He loved this place as he was able to watch the highway and see lorries and buses pass. The horse was life-size, molded of clay, baked, burnt, and brightly colored, with its head proudly tilted up. Beside the horse stood a warrior with sight-like mustachios. The horse was white, and on its back a cover of pure brocade of red and black. Muni looked at the sun. It was not yet time to go home. He thought it best to give his wife time to cool her temper and prepare food. He noticed a new sort of vehicle coming down at full speed. It looked like both a motor car and a bus. He used to be intrigued by the novelty of spectacles, but of late, work was going on the source of the river on the mountain, and an assortment of people and traffic went past him, and he took it all casually and described it to his wife later. Today, while he observed the yellow vehicle coming down, he was wondering how to describe it later to his wife when he sputtered and stopped in front of him. A red-faced foreigner who had been driving got down, went round it, stooping, looking, and poking under the vehicle. Then he straightened himself up, looked at the dashboard, stared in Muni's direction, and approached him. "Excuse me, is there a gas station nearby, or do I have to wait until another car comes?" He suddenly looked up at the clay horse and cried, "Marvelous!" Without completing his sentence, Muni felt he should get up and run away and curse his age. He could not readily put his limbs into action. The red-faced man wore khaki clothes, evidently a policeman or a soldier. Muni said to himself, "He will chase or shoot if I start running. Some dogs chase only those who run. Oh Shiva, protect me. I don't know why this man should be after me." Meanwhile, the foreigner cried, "Marvelous!" again nodding his head. He paced around the statue with his eyes fixed on it. Muni sat frozen for a while, and then fidgeted and tried to edge away. Now, the other man suddenly pressed his palms together, smiled, and said, "Namaste, how do you do?" At which Muni spoke the only English expressions he had learned, yes, no. Having exhausted his English vocabulary, he started in Tamil. "My name is Muni. These two goats are mine, and no one can gainsay it, though our village is full of slanderers these days who will not hesitate to say what belongs to a man doesn't belong to him." The foreigner faithfully looked in the direction indicated by Muni's fingers, gazed for a while at the two goats and the rocks, and with a puzzled expression took out a silver cigarette case and lit a cigarette. Suddenly remembering the courtesies of the season, he asked, "Do you smoke?" Muni answered, "Yes, no." Whereupon the red-faced man took a cigarette and gave it to Muni, who received it with surprise, having had no offer of a smoke from anyone for years now. He had always wanted to smoke a cigarette. Only once did the shopman give him one on credit, and he remembered how good it had tasted. The other flicked the lighter open and offered a light to Muni. Muni felt so confused about how to act that he blew on it and put it out. The other, puzzled but undaunted, flourished his lighter, presented it again, and lit Muni's cigarette. Muni drew a deep puff and started coughing. It was racking, no doubt, but extremely pleasant. When his cough subsided, he wiped his eyes and took stock of the situation, understanding that the other man was not an inquisitor of any kind. Yet, in order to make sure, he remained wary. No need to run away from a man who gave him such a potent smoke. His head was reeling from the effect of one of the strong American cigarettes made with roasted tobacco. The man said, "I come from New York," took out a wallet from his hip pocket, and presented his card. Muni shrank away from the card. Perhaps he was trying to present a warrant and arrest him. Beware of khaki, one part of his mind warned. Take all the cigarettes or whatever is offered, but don't get caught. Beware of khaki. He wished he weren't 70, as the shopman had said. At 70, one didn't run, but surrendered to whatever came. He could only ward off trouble by talk, so he went on, all in the chaste Tamil for which Kritam was famous. He said, "Before God, sir, Bhagwan, who sees everything, I tell you, sir, that we know nothing of the case. If the murder was committed, whoever did it will not escape. Bhagwan is all-seeing. Don't ask me about it. I know nothing." A body had been found mutilated and thrown under a tamarind tree at the border between Krittam and Kuppam a few weeks before, giving rise to much gossip and speculation. Muni added an explanation. Anything is possible there. People over there will stop at nothing. The foreigner nodded his head and listened courteously, though he understood nothing. "I am sure you know when this horse was made," said the red-faced man and smiled. Muni reacted to the relaxed atmosphere by smiling himself and pleaded, "Please go away, sir. I know nothing. I promise we will hold him for you if we see any bad character around, and we will bury him up to the neck in a coconut pit if he tries to escape. But our village has always had a clean record. Must definitely be the other village." Now the red man implored, "Please, please, I will speak slowly. Please try to understand me. Can't you understand even a simple word of English? Everyone in this country seems to know English. I have gotten along with English everywhere in this country, but you don't speak it. Have you any religious or spiritual scruples against English speech?" Suddenly, Muni noticed a new sort of vehicle looking like a motor car and bus. It stopped near him, and a red-faced foreigner got off, asked Muni if there was a gas station nearby. He looked at the horse and gave a cry of disbelief. Muni was frightened and decided to run because he thought he was a police as he had khaki clothes. The foreigner greeted Muni with namaste and admired the horse. Muni knew only two words in English: yes, no. The funny part was he said them together. He said it and began talking in Tamil. He introduced himself and gave information about his goats, the villagers, and their habits. The foreigner then took out a silver cigarette case and offered Muni a cigarette. Muni was pleased. When he offered to light it, Muni got confused and blew it out. The second time, he drew a deep puff and started coughing. He realized that he was not a police. Then the foreigner took a card. This frightened Muni. He mistook it for an arrest warrant. He wanted to run, but thought of his age and decided to stay on and convince the foreigner with his words. He began to explain about the murder. God would punish the culprit, and he didn't know anything about it. Muni was referring to a body that had been found between his village, Kritam, and the next village, Kuppam. Muni blamed the other village for the murder. The foreigner just shook his head without understanding a word. Then he asked Muni about the horse with a smile. Muni felt comforted and tried convincing him that they would catch the murderer and punish him. The red-faced man was getting impatient and told Muni that he would talk slowly, but Muni should try to understand him. He said he was surprised that Muni could not speak even the basic English when all the others knew it. He wondered if Muni had any religious reasons for not speaking the language. Let's have a look at the meanings. Arid, dry. Intrigued, lured. Gainsay, deny. Undaunted, not afraid. Wary, suspicious. Potent, powerful. Mutilated, disfigured. Speculation, guesswork. Scruples, doubts. Meandered, curved. I have prepared a character sketch of Muni. Muni was an old man. Earlier he was prosperous, but now he's gone poor. He lived a lonesome life. He loved to watch the highway to connect with the larger world. Muni was a simple and innocent man. He depended on his wife At the same time, he was concerned about her. Munni could not speak English. I have a few questions for you. What does microscopic dot indicate? It indicates that the village was very small in size and hardly visible on the map. Describe the other houses in the village. The other houses in the village were distributed in 4 streets. They were made of bamboo thatch, straw, mud, and other unspecified material. Which tree grew near Muni's house and why did he claim it as his? A drumstick tree grew in front of Muni's house and he would take the drumsticks home. He claimed it to be his because no one could say precisely who owned the tree and he lived in its shadow. How did Muni try to draw the shopkeeper's attention? When Muni went to the shop, he sat patiently on an upturned packing case below the platform of the shop. The shopman paid no attention to him, so Muni kept clearing his throat, coughing and sneezing until the shopman could not stand it anymore. What was the shopkeeper's response? The shopkeeper shouted at Muni, asking him what ailed him, and warned him that he would fly off that seat into the gutter if he sneezed so hard. He also referred to Muni as a young man. How did Muni try to humor the shopkeeper and why? Muni laughed when the shopkeeper called him a young man. He did this in order to please the shopkeeper because the shopkeeper liked his sense of humor to be appreciated. Muni used this as a ruse to ask for credit from the shopkeeper. In what manner did Muni try to convince the shopkeeper? The shopkeeper refused to give Muni anything on credit unless he had paid his earlier debt of 5 rupees and a quarter. Muni immediately replied that he would pay everything on the first of the next month as his daughter would be sending him money. We'll go to the next slide. How did the shopkeeper call Muni's bluff? When Muni explained to the shopkeeper that his daughter would be sending him money for his 50th birthday, the shopkeeper told him he must be 70 years and he had also not known that Muni had a daughter. He reminded Muni about a birthday 5 weeks ago when he had come for castor oil for his holy bath. What did Muni's wife tell him when he returned empty-handed? When Muni returned empty-handed from the shop, his wife was angry and told him that he would not be getting any sauce today nor anything else, as there was nothing in the house. She asked him to fast as it would do him good. It would be better if he took the goats and went and not return until sunset. Why did Muni decide it was best to obey her? Muni decided it was best to obey his wife because he knew she would somehow conjure up some food for him in the evening. Only he must not argue or irritate her. Her temper would improve by evening. She would go out and work, grind corn in the big house, sweep or scrub somewhere, and earn enough money to buy foodstuff and keep dinner ready for him in the evening. I prepared a quiz for you since India has so many states and each state has many languages. So I'll give you a minute to just check how many answers are you able to get. They're all very simple. So we will call out. Andhra Pradesh is Telugu. Goa has 2, Marathi and Konkani. Himachal Pradesh has Hindi and Pahari. Karnataka has Kannada. Kerala, Malayalam. Meghalaya is Khasi. Orissa is Odia. Gujarat is Gujarati. Tamil Nadu is Tamil. And of course, Maharashtra is Marathi. So leaving you with this, please read the part that I've already completed. And in the next class, I will continue with part 2. Thank you.